Hey beautiful people, what is up and welcome back to my channel and welcome to another first impressions video. Today we are going to be talking about the brand new Fantasy Cosmetica Fighter palette. I am so excited because this is the first neutral release from the brand, so this is going to be something very different for them. If this is your first time watching me, welcome. I'm Jamila. I love all things beauty. I love all things makeup and skincare, and I especially love sharing my tips and tricks for how to find high-end and luxury beauty products at bargain prices. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, I would absolutely love if you would consider subscribing and joining the fam. Okay, so I did receive this in PR. This was gifted to me by the brand. So huge thank you to Fantasy Cosmetica for sending this along. I have been on their PR list for some time now, and I will say that I absolutely love their products. So the way in which this is going to work, standard first impressions video, I'm going to give you guys some product details. I will pop up some swatches. I'll actually talk about the product details while I'm showing you guys the swatches because I'm not going to do live swatches in today's video. And then we will dive into two looks, and then I will end with my first impressions thoughts, just letting you guys know sort of my overall impression of the eyeshadow palette. Now, bonus part of this video is that in addition to the palette, the brand is launching another fragrance. They started doing fragrances with their last release. They released 2 fragrances in 10 milliliter bottles, which, let me get those to show y'all. Hold on. So these are the 2 fragrances that were released with their Rogue release. These are the 10 milliliter bottles. So now they have a new fragrance to add to their collection. This is a 30 milliliter bottle that the brand sent me, but it does also come in the 10 milliliter bottle format if you were interested in picking it up. Similar to the previous release, it is hand painted as well. So I really like that kind of personal detail that the brand hand paints their fragrance bottles. All right, so let me dive into some product details so you guys can get a sense for what this is about. So again, this is the Fighter palette. The description says that fighters are masters of combat, able to wield a variety of weapons with ease and accuracy. Coming from many backgrounds, they are soldiers, knights, bodyguards, mercenaries, and vagabonds. Some fight with honor using their skills only to aid, while others don't care how their skills are used as long as they're getting paid. This palette is a neutral color story with 4 mattes, 1 multi-chrome, and 4 multi-dimensional shimmers. The eyeshadows are vegan, were not tested on animals, made in China, and will be shipped from Redmond, Washington, US. So for the individual shades in the palette, we have Cavalier, a matte light true gray, Glory, which is the only multi-chrome in the palette, which is a mix of blue and gold sparkles that shift to pink, and blue sparkles with a yellow-brown base. Valor is a dusty yellow matte. Blade is a multi-dimensional shimmer with a silver base with green and purple shifting sparkles. Fervor is a red with silver sparkles multi-dimensional shimmer. Victory is a warm brown with pink and silver sparkles multi-dimensional shimmer. Warrior is a warm deep gray matte. Might is a deep brown purple with gold sparkles multi-dimensional shimmer. And Marshall is a neutral mid-tone brown matte. Now, in terms of pricing, the palette will retail for $38.99. However, you can use affiliate codes from creators to get 10% off of your purchase. If you didn't want to buy the full palette and you were just interested in singles, those are also available. You can purchase a matte shadow for $4.99. You can purchase one of the multi-dimensional shimmers for $5.99, or you could purchase the multi-chrome shadow for $9.99. So there you have it. Those are all of the product details for the eyeshadow palette. Now let me give you guys some quick details about the fragrance. So the fragrance is created in-house by the owner of Fantasy Cosmetica, and the perfume will be offered in 10 milliliter and 30 milliliter alcohol-based sprays, which are able to ship within the continental US only. It will also be available in a 10 milliliter coconut oil-based format, which will be available to ship worldwide. The top notes are roasted almond, peach blossom, marshmallow heart, cashmere, caramelized honey, cocoa butter, and jasmine. The base notes are dark chocolate, musk, vanilla, and sandalwood. No, now that I think about it, I do smell the coconut butter. It reminds me so much of my childhood. So if you wanted just to purchase a sample of the spray, a 1 milliliter sample, that will be $2.59. And that is available to ship worldwide. If you wanted the roll-on format in the 10 milliliter bottle, that's going to be $16.99. If you wanted the 10 milliliter alcohol spray, that's going to be $16.99 as well. and is only available to ship within the US. And the 30 milliliter spray is going to be $32.99 and also only available to ship within the US. Okay, so let's dive into the demo of the eyeshadow palette, and then at the end I'll come back and tell you guys about the palette as well as the fragrance. Now, I haven't had a chance to test this out for very long. I'm literally only wearing it for the first time today, so I will have to come back and tell you guys in a later video how it wears, how long it lasts, how the scent changes with my body chemistry. And one thing I will say is that I do notice the strong cocoa notes. Like, it smells like a cocoa plant and it smells like cocoa butter. So if you like the cocoa butter scent, you are going to love this. Because that is the predominant, like, it's the dominant smell. I'm not really getting some of the other notes, but I wonder if I wear this longer, if some of those other notes will start to peek through. But yeah, that's it from me. Let's go ahead and dive into the two looks, and then I'll come back and give you guys my final first impressions thoughts. Okay, beauties, let's go ahead and get started with the first look. Per usual, I am doing this without having swatched the palette yet, so I don't know how this is gonna go, but we just gonna dive in. So I'm gonna start by going into this, it's kind of like an orange, not orange, like a yellow-green shade. These typically don't show up on me, so I'm a little bit skeptical. It's called Valor, so I'm gonna take a little bit of that. I'm gonna use that as my transition shade today. Yeah, you see, these shades don't do nothing for me. Unless I lay down a white base or something, this isn't gonna do anything. I think you just cut them in two. Actually, it is doing a little something. It is building a little bit. You see that? It doesn't look like the shade in the pan, but it's doing something. Damn, now I know what I want to do, and it's too late because I already started this look, but we're just gonna keep going. Anyways, as you can see, I am getting something here. It's definitely not, I would say, the shade in the pan, but this is something that I expect with this type of shade. It's just how this turns out on my skin too. And I also want to say that because of the concealer that I laid down as an eye primer, I can see this shade mixing with that concealer to create this shade. So yeah, you can see the shadow here, you can see nothing here. You see what I mean? I think that you're mistaken. You're stealing my heart, baby, stealing my heart. So next up, I'm gonna take Marshall. That is the brown, kind of neutral brown shade, and I'm gonna start building up the outer crease with it. And I will say that even though that initial color did not show up the way it kind of looked in the pan, that it did blend pretty nicely. So it built and it blended nicely. So in terms of performance, I think it's perfectly fine, and I think on a different skin tone, it will absolutely look gorgeous. Although I'm not mad at how it turned out on mine. So I'm just taking this Marshall shade, building out the outer V, and that is blending nicely into that first shade. Love how these mattes are performing. Okay, ooh, this is pretty. Now, initially I was gonna try to go in with both of these shades, but I actually think I'm gonna play around with the purple. So I'm gonna do the purple and the orange, starting with the purple in the inner center of the eye, plus, so into the center of the eye, and then taking the orange into the inner part. So using my Refa number 1 brush, I'm gonna go into the purple shimmer. This is called Might. Okay, pretty decent pickup. I'm gonna apply that into the center of the lid. Love is automatic. You're stealing my heart, baby, stealing my heart. You're stealing my heart, baby, stealing my heart. I don't have many troubles, but I think I'm just gonna take my index finger, pick up some of that on my finger. Ooh. And then just press that in to get a little bit more opacity. Then I'm gonna take my Sonia G Wicker brush and I'm gonna go into the orange shade. It's called Victory. And I'm gonna put that into the inner third of the eye. So again, taking my finger, picking up some of that product, gonna stamp that in to get a little bit more impact. Okay, so this is what the eyes are looking like. You guys know the drill, blend until your heart is content. So I'm gonna go ahead and blend all these shades together, clean things up a little bit so it's a little bit more, you know, the lines are a lot cleaner and everything kind of flows together really well. So I'm gonna go do that, then I'll come back and show you guys the final look, and then we'll get started on look number 2. So here we are, and this is the final face, and I really like this. I think that this is such a cute, really nice neutral look. I will say that one thing I am noticing off of first jump with these shimmers is that they're not as wet and creamy as some of the previous shimmers from the brand. So these are definitely a little bit more, I wouldn't call them satin-like, but definitely a lot smoother, a lot more powdery, so they don't sink into the lines as much. But I'm gonna save my final thoughts for the end of the video, but I'm really happy with this face. Just really quickly in terms of what I'm wearing on the rest of my face, I am using the Milk Matte Primer along with my Hourglass foundation. I'm using the Dior bronzer topped with my Bare Minerals bronzer. I'm using the Bare Cheeks blush palette from Blend Bunny Cosmetics, and my lips is Buxom. It's the shade Angel, which I think is discontinued, but I'm so close to emptying that lipstick. Is it here? No, it's not here, but that's pretty much this face. Let's go ahead and jump into look number 2. Okay guys, we are back for look number 2. We're gonna go in with this gray shade. That's called Cavalier, and that's gonna go as our transition shade for this look. Gray is definitely not a color that I use very often in my looks, and that's just mainly because I prefer gold. I'm definitely a more yellow golden undertone, so I tend to stick with that color story because I think it complements me well. But I am excited to play in this, and it is performing really well. It's blending really nicely, and I'm getting really decent impact. I know you're ADD, but just focus here on me, 'cause I need to feel you here tonight. Yeah, we're having people here, and we'll get a little weird, so just come and meet me here tonight. I'm at a house in town with cars in the front. You probably hear the sound on the roof above. I know we only just met, but this could be fun. You should come, yeah, you should come. 'Cause there's a room upstairs where nobody goes, and I'll be good, I swear. Just need you alone. I know we only just met, but this could be fun. You should come, yeah, you should come. Okay, so I absolutely love where the eyes are going, slash hell, where the eyes are at. So let's go ahead and add some shimmer. Now I'm gonna go with my Refer number 33 brush. This is just a giant brush, and that is because I want to take the shade Glory, which is this multi-chrome right there, and I'm gonna just put that all over the lid. So this will allow me to pick up a lot of that product and just slap it all over the lid. You should come, yeah, you should come. 'Cause there's a room. Also, I have like 0 brushes left. I have to wash basically all of my brushes, and it's giving me so much anxiety because it's so much. As tempted as I am to put another shade on here, I'm going to resist the urge. So this is going to be the simplest look using this palette. It's really just 3 shades. A transition shade, a outer corner shade, and then the lid shimmer. Okay, this is what the eyes are looking like. Really, really pretty. I'm gonna go ahead, one, clean this up a little bit. I am getting a little bit of fallout, and it could just be because this is not necessarily the best brush for this. So I'm gonna clean things up. Actually, before I do that, I'm just picking up some of that on my finger, and I'm just gonna stamp that over it to get full opacity. There you go. That is so pretty. You can see the difference in when I use my finger versus when I don't. So I'm just gonna take my finger and press this in. Then I'll go back in with the brush, clean everything up, and come back and show you guys the final look. If it gets too late, we'll go back to my house. Better get here fast, cause I really need to feel you right now. Cause I know you're ADD, but just focus here on me, cause I need to feel you here tonight. Yeah, we're having people here and we'll get a little weird, so just come. Okay guys, I'm back and this is the final look, and I like this more than I thought. Now this is definitely more silver, more blue leaning than I didn't know where this was gonna go. Let me stop beating around the bush. I had no idea how this was gonna end up, but I will say that I'm pleasantly surprised with how this looks. I love how the shadow has settled into the lids, because this is definitely a thicker texture than some of the shades in the palette, but it's settled in really nicely. Okay, let's talk about all of the products though, so you guys get my full first impressions thoughts. So the Fantasy Cosmetica Fighter palette, I will say that I am so impressed with this palette, and I'm really happy that the brand decided to release a palette for the natural girlies. When it comes to indie makeup, I think we all know that indie tends to be very much more colorful, more adventurous, more out there, a little bit more on the artistic side. So we don't see as many indie brands releasing, a lot of neutral palettes, but I think there's a neutral girl in all of us, okay? I think a lot of us, even though we love our color, there's just something to a solid neutral look. Y'all know I love me my neutrals, so I was really happy that they released this. I will say that with this being a neutral palette, I do think that there is a lot of versatility in terms of you can still get some color out of this, right? So you kind of have the standard brown shades that work well for neutral look, in terms of including like the gold shimmer, this kind of maroonish shimmer. But then you do have some color with the multi-chromes and the purple shades. I love that this does give a little bit of variety also, in the sense of this is kind of like a warm neutral and this is kind of cool tone because you have the silvers. So again, you get a little bit of that variety there. Is it the stereotypical neutral palette in terms of just a bunch of browns? No. So I'm really impressed that they were able to do that with a 9-pan palette. One thing I want to point out with this palette though is that I noticed that there was in some ways a bit of a difference in terms of formula compared to previous palettes and even within this palette. So in the Fighter palette, I felt like we had this one shade here that was extremely creamy and definitely on the thicker, chunkier side compared to these rest of these shades that I felt were a little bit smoother and a little bit more satin-like. And I want to show you guys an example from like the previous palette. So the thicker shade that I showed you guys definitely reminded me more of these two super creamy shades from the Rogue palette, which does have the potential to crease. They also, as you could probably see in the pan, have a little bit more chunk to them compared to like this one that's a little bit smoother. I will say that those more smooth shimmers reminded me a lot more of the original palette that I got from them, the Druid palette, and these kind of shimmers. And after wearing them for a while, I felt like the smoother shimmers settled into the eyes really nicely and almost looked satin-like. They weren't satin by any means, like they definitely had pretty high shine to them, but I say almost satin-like because I was really pleased with how they settled in, and it definitely made me feel like, okay, this is definitely a palette I can wear to work. It's one that I don't feel like would be too distracting if I were to wear the smoother shimmers on the eyes, because they don't have that crazy texture like the one that I'm wearing here, or the over the top shine, which might just be inappropriate for some job settings. So just wanted to point that out. But again, really nice shine, really nice impact. Also, the depth. Can I just say, Fantasy Cosmetica has done such an amazing job in terms of their palettes when it comes to making sure that their mattes have depth that work for everyone. So as you can see, the two sort of transition shades here, I would say they're pretty mid-tone shades, which means that they work really, really well for my complexion and can be used as transition shades. I was really concerned that there might be something that's a little bit more ashy and might not work really well for me. Don't get me wrong, this one is definitely a challenge for my skin tone, but that's a me problem. I think it would work well for other people. But in terms of the depth that they chose, this mid-tone works really well for my complexion, and I found that the mattes are really easy to blend out. I didn't have any issues with that at all. Also, really good deep shades, which can be used to deepen up any of the shades, as well as work as outer corner shades for me as well. So really pleased with the mattes, really pleased with the shimmers, happy about the matte to shimmer ratio. I just think that overall this was a really well curated palette, and I'm very excited to have a neutral collection, a neutral addition to my Fantasy Cosmetica collection. Okay, last thing I want to talk about is the fragrance. So they did this with their previous release when they released a fragrance, when they actually released two fragrances that came in 10 milliliter bottles. And I will say that I really enjoy those fragrances. They were definitely a lot more earthy, a lot more fall in my opinion. So I was very intrigued to see the new fragrance being released. Now, I'm not a fragrance girly. I'm really bad at just kind of describing these scents and undertones and whatnot. But I will say that the description that the brand sent was that this is a dark chocolate marshmallow and almond scent with floral accents. So I definitely get the chocolate. And it doesn't smell like typical chocolate. It smells like cocoa. If you ever, which is the original plant, obviously. I don't know if you guys have ever had, tasted, held, smelled like just pure cocoa off the tree. I have, growing up in an island, it's something that I've had the pleasure of doing. So it definitely smells like cocoa. It doesn't smell like refined chocolate, and I appreciate that. I'm not a huge chocolate person. I hate the taste of chocolate. Not a huge fan of the scent, but I do think that this cocoa smell is really good. I don't really get the marshmallow from it or the floral scent. I will say the cocoa is extremely overpowering, which kind of makes sense because cocoa is a pretty overpowering scent. So if you don't like the smell of chocolate, you're not going to like this, because that is pretty much what sticks out to me the most. I do think that this is an interesting release for now because we are still in the summertime, and given that this scent is chocolate, marshmallow, almonds, that gives me more Christmas vibes where it's a lot colder, we're all kind of sitting around the campfire, that kind of thing. So I think in terms of timing, this wouldn't be a fragrance that I would pick up for the summertime, because it definitely gives me more warm, cozy winter vibes. But definitely your choice. I don't think fragrance has to be seasonal. I don't think it is seasonal. Wear what you like. If you like chocolate scents, you can wear it in the summertime too. But really nice. I will say I love how the bottle is painted. I do appreciate these hand-painted bottles. However, the one downside that I found to this is because these bottles are hand-painted, there's literally no way to tell where you are in terms of usage. So that is a bit of a challenge for me, and was a challenge in the two releases that they had previously, because when you like a scent, you want to know when you're close to finishing it so you can actually repurchase it. But with these, you just kind of have to gauge based on the weight if it's like close to being empty or not. So that might be something the brand wants to consider looking into further. Okay, let me end on some quick product details if you're planning to pick this up. So this palette will launch July 20th at 9 a.m. PST. I'll put down what that is in EST. I don't know. I'm on the East Coast, so I'll put it down below so you guys know what that means for us. And the palette itself will retail for $38.99. but you can purchase the shadows individually. So if you just want a matte shadow, it's going to be $4.99. If you want a multi-dimensional shimmer, just like that's basically a standard shimmer, it's going to be $5.99. And if you want a multi-chrome, it's going to be $9.99. And I think that's a pretty fair price, especially considering multi-chromes usually starts at like $15. So $9.99, pretty solid. In terms of the fragrance, it is going to be released in a couple different samples, sizes, and formats. So you can get a coconut oil based sample for $2.59. So if you're not sure about the fragrance, I definitely recommend trying the sample to figure out if that is something that you actually want to buy a full bottle for. And that's going to be a 1 milliliter sample. Then there is a coconut oil based roll-on, which is going to be $16.99. There's a 10 milliliter alcohol spray, and then there's a 30 milliliter alcohol spray. This one that I have here is the 30 milliliter alcohol spray. And the alcohol sprays will only be available to ship within the US. So if you want this, you're not going to be able to get the spray form. If you want this and you live outside of the US, you won't be able to get the spray format. You can only get the oil-based roll-on format. All right, so, and lastly, I do have a code with Fantasy Cosmetica. It is affiliated, which means that if you purchase using my code, I will get a small commission that will just go back into supporting this channel, because y'all know this is an expensive hobby, right? Okay, so if you do want to support the channel and you're planning to purchase, use my code and you can save some money. It doesn't have to be mine, to be quite frank. Just use anybody's code. Don't pay full price makeup, because that's not what we do over here. But my code is just Jamila, and that will save you about 10% off your purchase. All right, so that's it for this first impressions video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This will definitely be a part of a ranking the last 10 eyeshadow palettes I tried coming up soon. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Leave your comments down below letting me know your thoughts on this release. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you more than you know, and I'll catch you in my next one. Bye!